Well, one person should probably.
But do they have to be in the camera?
Lily did it.
No, they don't need to be in the
It's
camera.
fine.
Okay.
Lily.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
We're starting. The first question is really simple. We just want to know a little bit more about you and tell us about your background and before you were with A Wider Circle.
Sure. I've always had a desire to help people. I started as a very young age. Right after undergrad, I worked for an organization called Covenant House. So I worked with runaway youth in their community, their mission for a couple years. And then after that, I went to law school because I thought I could use my law degree in getting, to helping people advocate for their rights as well. So I did that for a short period of time, but I still worked for a couple other family and youth organizations as a lawyer as well. Then the next job I had was transitional housing. So I worked with people who were homeless to get housing. And so I always, not always, but a lot of the people that we were working with needed services such as furniture. And that's how I was introduced to A Wider Circle. I would bring some of my clients to A Wider Circle to get furniture, and met Mark, attended a lot of different conferences with him. And after I was there at the transitional housing program for a couple of years, it was getting ready to close. And so I came over to A Wider Circle. It was a great transition for me since I had already been familiar with it.
Oh, that's great. So how did you get involved with the education program that you're in now?
I was first hired to work with residents who lived in senior housing, a public housing apartment building in DC. It was a part-time job. We had received this huge grant, a $350,000 grant, to put a garden in front of the apartment complex on North Capitol Street in DC. And so I was managing the creativity and the production of the garden, and then I also did workshops with the residents of the program. So we did nutrition classes, we did stress management, we did exercise. We had exercise class twice a week, and so even people who were in wheelchairs or walkers, joined in on the classes. And then people were doing other types of programs in education, such as Well Mother, Well Baby. And when people moved on to different departments, I started working more and more in different programs within A Wider Circle. So I started in education, but I've been there for over 4 years, so my time and responsibilities have increased tremendously, as well as the programs too.
With the professional development job programs, how does a participant get started in the program? Like, what is the first step in joining the program?
That's a great question. We set up interviews with everybody who's interested in the week-long intensive program. We do have some criteria. They do have to be over the age of 18. They have to be eligible to work in the United States. And they need to be able to speak and understand English, just because of the jobs that we're trying to place them in. It doesn't mean that if somebody comes to us and they don't have a work permit or can't speak English, they can never join our program, but we will refer them and work with other agencies to make sure that they get those tasks done before they start our program. So we'll spend about half an hour speaking to each person who's interested in our program, and really our main goal then is to make sure that they have a commitment to this program, that we're treating the week-long program as a job. And so they need to be available Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. They need to dress business casual. We do help them with clothing if they don't have anything that would come under that category. But they have to be there on time. So if they don't come on time, then we'll have to refer them to come to a different time period where we're offering the program, because we're really serious about this. A big part of the program is work ethics, and so these are steps that they'll need to take in order to be able to keep a job. Many of the people that come into our educational programs have had jobs before in the past, and are able to get jobs, but one of the big problems is keeping the job, and that's what we spend a lot of time on.
So you went over work ethic and professional development. What are some other key points taught in the program?
Sure. Self-confidence is a big one. Goals. We talk about customer service, conflict resolution, and then we spend a good deal of time on writing a resume and cover letter and interviewing skills. We spend the last day just doing mock interviews that whole day. People, from the outside professions will come in and do the mock interviews with them as well.
So it's very heavily based on preparation and real world
Yes, yes. The whole program is preparation.
Could you expand on the self-confidence piece that you teach in the program?
Sure. It's, most of the people who have been unemployed for a while have depression. A lot of the people that come into our program have been out of work maybe 4 or 5 years or more. And so depression does come in, to it. They have lost their belief in their self. And that's really a big piece of a wider circle overall is belief. Belief that we can end poverty, belief that, these people can obtain jobs with our support and on their own too. And so we work on, trying to figure out their strengths and their weaknesses and their goals and how to obtain them and what barriers are interfering with getting a job and how can we overcome those barriers as well.
During the program, when you're building self-confidence,
Mm-hmm.
and you said you are clearly the program is supporting the participants, but how do the participants support each other throughout the program?
We had this pilot program in October, and there was 8 participants there, 7 women and 1 male. And we really couldn't have asked for a better group to start. They were wonderful. Everybody was highly motivated in the group, and they really formed this cohesive group. This was the beginning of October, and all 8 people are still friends with each other. They meet up together, they talk to each other, they encourage each other. And so doing different interactive activities, most of the program's interactive. We don't spend a lot of time just standing in the front, lecturing. And so they have to get to know each other. We do a lot of teamwork activities as well. And so they end up trusting each other and relying on each other heavily. Some of the people had, because of personality issues, in the very beginning, maybe had some problems with 1 or 2 people. But by the end of the program, they were so welcoming and encouraging and accepting of everybody's differences that it was just really wonderful. And so by these activities, they really become a support for each other.
So then what would you say, what trends do you see amongst the most successful participants of the program other than being able to work together? The success is we want them to get a job. That's our overall goal. And so the people who have been most successful in doing that really spend the time after our program making that a full-time job as well, as looking for a job. It can't be something that you just do once a week, that you send out 1 or 2 resumes. It's really, really hard to get a job for most people today, not necessarily people living in poverty, but a lot of people, and so it's hard work. We are there for support. Each person that's in our program has a job coach that stays with them for at least a year, and they're there for support too. But we also need the job seekers to take initiative, and so when we email or call them, they need to respond, and they need to be talking to us about what their goals are and how they're working on these goals, and actually sending out multiple resumes and going to interviews that aren't necessarily their ideal job, but even just to practice the whole interview process. So it has to be something that they're really committed to doing and devoted to doing. It can't be something that is just a one-time shot. So, probably the most successful person that we have, just really, she had some issues that we needed to take care of before she actually was matched with a job coach, and she did them immediately. She worked on, her own health and mental health and some of the other barriers that she had to overcome in order to get full-time employment. She actually is starting her own business now. She's contracting with several different places.
as a translator and interpreter for Spanish-speaking people, and is doing great, and she's working every single day. She was somebody who was lacking in self-confidence. She never had to work outside of the home, and because of personal family situations, was forced to go back into work. And so we had to spend a lot of time with her trying to, make her believe in herself and, work on her self-confidence. But she's worked so hard in, making this work for her that she really is a success story.
That's great.
Do you think you could tell us a bit more about the role of the job coach and how they work with the participant?
Great, yeah. A job coach is also, we have guidelines for them. They have to commit to work with a particular person for a year. That means that they need to be in contact by phone or email at least once a week, and then meet face-to-face at least once a month, but we hope it's more often than that. We also will have meetings where they'll all come together, and we'll have celebrations and dinners so everybody can join together too. But we're hoping that we're asking our job coaches to open up their networks to our job seekers. We're trying our best to match the coaches with a job seeker who have similar interests. So if somebody has interest in going into banking, we would match somebody up in the banking field or finance field or something to that degree. So we're hoping that their network would be a network that would land a job or at least an interview for some of these job seekers. It doesn't always work that way, but that's, our goal is to try to do that. And so, but it is really tough. A lot of the people who want to be coaches have never worked with people living in poverty before, have really had an easier time in their life finding a job, and mostly because of their own networks, from family, from role models, from their education, from work experience that they had not had as difficult a time as some of our job seekers do. So, we've found, and it's really overall within a wider circle, that long-term support is really the way that's going to pull people out of poverty. We could give everybody a job right after they finish the program, and it doesn't mean that they're going to stay in the job or, end poverty that way. What it is when a community like Bullis comes together and really supports somebody, that's when they can end, poverty that way. And so that's when they can be successful in their job. So it's important for our job coaches to stay with their job seekers even after they get a job. It's not just until they get a job. It's, it's really important while they're working to make sure that their support system, if a question arises at work or they're having difficulty with a colleague, that, they can have somebody to talk to and say, what do I do in this situation? And then, some of our job seekers will lose a job within that year, and that's okay. I mean, that's life, it's going to happen. So we need to, to build them up and make sure that they're out there looking for another job. So it's a lot that's involved. A lot of it, unfortunately, is hands-on training. We can give them some ideas of the people they're working with and what kind of support they need. But it's all going to be on an individual basis. Every single person that comes in is going to have different needs and want different things out of our program. And so there's going to be a lot of questions, and so it's our job as an education team to support the job coaches so they can do a good job supporting our job seekers.
So what problems would you say that your job seekers face when they first get a job and they're first on like a true professional track?
When they're actually working in a job? Some things that we take for granted because of, people have taught us in the past. Simple things that you would not think about because you have role models and you've watched your parents or friends, at work, and you know how they treat a job. So for an example, if somebody is sick, normally you would call in and you would tell your boss, I'm sick today, or my child's sick today, I can't make it. But that doesn't come, it's not an automatic thought for some of our job seekers. And so they may be sick and they're literally sick, but they may not think to call their employer, and then they show up the next day and they may be fired, and they'll say, but I was sick. But it wasn't something that came natural to them to call. So there's just these little steps that we take for granted
that we really have to work on. And another thing is conflict, and that's why we do spend a lot of time with conflict resolution. They may not like their boss, but there are a lot of people in the world who don't like their boss. And so you need to learn out how to communicate and negotiate and work hand in hand so you can keep your job and get your job done. There's going to be a lot of personality conflicts, and they need to learn how to work at them. There's certain things that it's not appropriate to say to anybody, let alone on a job. And so it's kind of these types of things that we need to work on.
I don't know how well you can answer this or how much information you might have on this question, but how do you think that the outcome of the program affects not only the participant, but their families or their larger community?
It affects them tremendously. We talk a lot about two-generational poverty, and so you try to work with the children, and then from there you can work with the parents as well. And so it's kind of like the opposite effect with this particular program. We're working with the adults who need to earn a living for their children. And so it's really important for them to have a job in order to support their children. And they'll become the role model for their children. And so when their children are looking for a job, they'll know what to expect. They'll know how to handle a job. But also they need an income. The people that we're working with are living in poverty. And so they may have a slight income that they're receiving from social services or from disability. They may not have any income at all. They, for whatever reason, they just are not receiving any services at that time and need to do that, or have just recently lost their job or fired from a job. So there's various different reasons why they're living in poverty at this point. But so the number one thing is if they get a job, then they can support their family as well. But they, as I said earlier, they also need to show how important it is to be a respected part of society in a job to show to their own family as well.
And that goes along really well with what you were saying, how you have to teach them a lot about things that they may not have picked up when they were growing up. And
Right.
This person is learning it, and they can pass it on so that those children don't have to.
Exactly.
They're learning it as adults.
Exactly. And they're able to teach their own children. I mean, that's really the only reason that some people don't have these work ethics, because they weren't taught it. Just like, if you were never taught math, it's not going to come automatically to you. So it's something that has to be taught to people who never had that accessibility.
So, do you think this program fosters long-term sustainability for a lot of your participants, for the majority?
And that's what we're hoping for. That's the whole reason why we're doing it. Yes, I mean, the way to become self-sufficient is to have some type of employment and some type of income. And so we're hoping by the skills that they're gaining through our job program, it's something that they can sustain for the rest of their life. Another big part of our program is not to just have somebody find a job. We want them to have a job where they have a livable income, but then we also want them to learn how to advance in a career. So they may get a job and it may start at, we're hoping, not minimum wage and maybe a little bit above, $12 to $15 an hour, but still, to support a family of 4, it's not sufficient. And so they need to be able to stick with a job and be able to work with the team, with their supervisors, with everybody within that company to learn how to raise up within the company and to stick with it. And so our job coaches will be doing a lot of that as well, supporting them that way. And then this way it is self-sustainable. They will have a constant income. They will be in the work field, and hopefully they won't have to come back to our program to start again. No?
Charlotte, any questions?
Did you want to ask anything about the specific steps?
Yeah, we can talk about that. We went over it quickly, but if we just want to go all the way back when we were talking
Sure.
about the program, what are the specific steps of the program? Like, how do you go through the program? Like, what do you teach and when?
It's changed a little bit because we had this pilot program in October. We, saw that we spent a lot of time in that program, building the self-confidence and getting the participants to work together as a team. But when it came down to the resume writing and cover letters, the time that we allotted was not sufficient for them. And so, at the end of the week, they got a little stressed when it was time to do the mock interviews. They felt like their resumes weren't the best that they could be, and they hadn't practiced their interview skills a lot. So we are devoting probably half to each now. So the beginning, we'll be talking about listening skills and communication skills, customer service, work ethics, and they'll be the first probably 2.5 days. We'll have speakers that come in, inspirational speakers, people who have been in human resources at different companies that can talk about, what is expected on the job. And so that will, take part probably the first 2.5 days. And then after that, we'll spend a good deal of time on learning how to job search and really coming up with the job that they are seeking to find and how they can be qualified for that position, and if they are, if they're not, what they need to do, and then actually putting a resume together that has the skills listed in there of the type of job that they're seeking. And so, there's a lot of rewrites for that, just like any kind of paper. And so they'll be expected to do homework too and work on it at home, make sure they get their list together. Some of the people in the last class had jobs in the past, but they couldn't remember who their supervisors were or their times because it had been so long. So they need to do that kind of stuff at home. So when they actually get into the classroom, we go right to the computer and go right to the resume. And we have people who will help us during the week too, so everybody will have time for individual attention during that week as well. And so the resume writing, cover letter, and interview skills will take part like the last 2.5 days. And then the very last day, we spend the whole day doing mock interviews. We have people, come in and we'll set up stations throughout the whole Center for Professional Development where we'll do 15-minute actual interviews, and then they'll come back for evaluations and criticisms and comments and how to improve. And it was really great seeing the last group how I had interviewed a couple people and gave them suggestions, things that, weren't necessarily appropriate on an interview or, that they needed to correct, and observing them, interviewing, somebody the next time or 2 times after that, and how they already had changed that habit within the interview. So again, these mock interviews and the resumes, it doesn't mean that at the end of the week they're not going to have to practice or work on it anymore. They're going to have to continue to feel comfortable about it, and they may have to continue to tweak their resume a little bit depending on what kind of job they're looking for as well. And then the very last day after the mock interviews, we'll have a graduation ceremony, and the job seekers and the job coaches will come back, to celebrate them as well.
What is the teacher to student participant ratio usually?
It's we have 3 teachers that are there full time, and then we'll have anywhere from 10 to 15 students that will be in the class. We try to keep it pretty small, so the ratio is much better, to make it more of a cohesive group as well.
Okay. Any last questions? We can ask it later. Good.
Okay.
Great job. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you.
Great
Great.
job. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Before you shut down equipment, no, shut it down.
I accidentally started again after it's our.
I want to take advantage of the setup and have the cameo for the class, for the board report.
What do you want us to do?
Right.
What?
So where should we stand?
So there are 5 questions, 5 or so questions, and I can get 1 or 2 people to mic up, or you, and you continue to shoot.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of got
Not
an
really.
eye on Ashlyn and Ollie. 'Cause 'cause I know these two ladies don't want to be in it, but can we just shift to that now and just quickly?
Yes, I don't know.
Sounds good to me.
I know it sounds.
I'm staying where I am, or am I
No, I'll
moving?
bring you
Okay.
up so you can eat.
Okay, good.
So if you pass your mic to one of these ladies,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then just ask the questions. Charlotte, would you want to be videoed? Would you want to be?
I think she
I can
does.
interview.
I think she would love
So
it.
you can come up and
There you go.
Thank you.
Sure.
just raise some questions. Hmm? Oh, you didn't get any food the first time?
I did, but like,
You're escaping me.
So we don't need your camera?
No, it's on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
She never stopped the recording. Lily.